All right. Well, my name is Kevin Zimmerman. I was an E5 at the time of Baqubah. I think by then I'd been, when did we deploy? The end of '06. That was my second deployment. I joined early '03. So, yeah, this was my second go around. Seems like half of the guys we had there, that was their second tour. A lot of those scouts I was with were all the former 2-7.
Yeah.
I was the former Charlie 112 tanker for OIF2. So Charlie was the only guys to stay with 112 when they redrew all the brigades. Yeah, like a little bit before that, I reclassed from 19 Kilo over to 19 Delta, mainly because my tank commander got DA selected to become a scout. I think early '06 they were just short on scouts, so a lot of the tankers were just getting orders. The same way guys were coming down on drill or recruiting orders, guys were just getting, hey, you're gonna go be a scout now. So he had went over to the scout platoon. He left Charlie, went to HHC, and I stayed in touch with him because me and him shot a couple gunneries together. And he's like, "Hey man, come be a scout. This stuff's cool." So I went to retention, and I asked them, "Hey, if I volunteer to do this, since they're short, can I do that?" And yeah, they got me a nice fat bonus for doing a 3-year stint to reclass. So I was able to pretty much immediately join the scout platoon as a tanker right before the JRTC rotation when we went down to Fort Polk.
Oh
And
yeah, that wonderful rotation.
yeah, that was horrible. I hate that place. Yeah, so I was with the platoon up until then, and then before the deployment, I guess maybe someone realized, or maybe paperwork finally came through that, hey, I wasn't officially a scout. So I had to go up to Knox to do a reclass course, 5 weeks. And while I was up there, everybody deployed. So I missed
Okay.
I missed the first 3 weeks of that deployment.
Yeah, so you missed kind of the Kuwait and the retro or the movement north.
I missed all that. Once I was done at Knox, and I went back to Hood, and I was on Rear D. I'm just waiting on the next flight. And the Rear D commander, Captain Royce, he was actually my platoon leader in my first deployment. I was
Okay.
his driver when we deployed as tankers, but we didn't bring tanks. We were in Humvees that whole deployment. And that is when Sergeant Haynes and Moots got killed, and Grusner and Chico and the interpreter. That's when that all happened. I was still on Rear D.
Yeah.
So I was getting ready. I don't remember what time of day it was, but I got a call from Captain Royce, and he told me, he's like, "Hey, can you come up here? We got to talk." He didn't want to tell me that stuff over the phone, so yeah, I showed up. He told me about what had happened, and the fortunate part of all that, of the timing, I wouldn't say fortunate, but I was able to go up to New York with Captain Royce for Sergeant Haynes' funeral.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, I flew up there. I flew home to Philadelphia because I was going to be deploying in a couple weeks anyway, and flew up there and hopped in a car and drove up to New York City, and then the whole procession from there all the way up to Albany.
Yeah.
So I drove with Captain Royce and Sergeant Haynes' brother-in-law all the way up
Mhm.
there, and then got to go to the service at the cemetery, meet the whole family, and then
Yeah.
it was a weird way to start a deployment because I thought
Oh yeah.
I thought my first deployment was pretty bad. 0405 in Solder City, dealing with the Mahdi militia and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And then yeah, then this all happened right before I was about to go on my second tour. So it was kind of like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, it's a I don't want to say a huge wake up call, but it's like this is real because I mean you were part of the platoon, you know how what a figure, father figure, mentor, or Sergeant Haynes was to everybody. I mean, as you point out, the whole reflagging. So a lot of us, as you mentioned, worked together for so many years,
Mhm.
and then to do our first deployment, come back, and then for you to get that message and then or get told face to face and then go to the funeral and then have to get on a plane. That had to be a really
Yeah, it made that flight over very different than what I was expecting. Because as bad as my first tour was, my platoon didn't lose anybody. I mean, we were a smaller platoon. Tanker platoon only had 16 guys. We didn't lose anybody. And then my company, Charlie, Crazy Horse, we didn't lose anybody that first deployment either. Guys were
yeah.
getting hit up by IEDs all the time, and there was regular contact with the enemy. But maybe the big difference was 0405 because you guys were all in Fallujah, right?
We were in Taji,
Mhm.
and then we went and did Najaf and Fallujah.
Mhm.
But steady state operations or whatever they wanted to call it back then.
Mhm.
When we were at Taji, Solder City was the man. It's real. Solder City is the hot spot of Iraq, and yeah, Fallujah popped off, Najaf popped off, but
Mhm.
you guys were in the hot area of 405, and yeah, I mean that second deployment, that '06, '08, that deployment was a lot different. I mean, the IEDs were much bigger, and
Yeah. that was the big difference I noticed was just the caliber of the IEDs because in Solder City when we didn't have up armored Humvees until a few months into that deployment.
Oh yeah,
My
yeah.
my Humvee was I guess it was like a maintenance Humvee. It was that square top one that had the toolboxes on the side of the
Oh, you just had the kit that goes on a normal Humvee. So yeah, it was just a hard top kit. But yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, like when we rolled north, it was literally a hodgepodge of sandbags and
Mhm.
Kevlar blankets or the hard top that didn't even come with the vehicle. It was bolted on, and you just went north.
Yeah, we I mean there wasn't even a place to mount a crew serve. So what we did when we got that Humvee in Iraq, we went straight down to the maintenance hangar and cut the roof off, just straight across the top, and then got the guys to weld a mount to the floor of the Humvee. So our gunners were standing up, and they just had a tow strap kind of around their lower back, and
Yeah.
if they weren't manning that machine gun, that thing was just angled straight up in the air because it was just a hodgepodge throw together. And then you get back from your first tour and everybody's okay, and you get a few months of downtime because you got no equipment, and then you get you get that feeling like, well, I was already there. It's pretty bad. It can't get much worse. This next deployment is going to be way easier than that one, and I'm sure that's how everybody
Yeah.
felt leading up, and flying over and doing Kuwait. And then I'm on rear D, and I hear that we already lost the whole crew.
Yeah.
It was just like it put me in a mindset that's not a good way to start a deployment. I wasn't. It was just fear. A lot of fear gets put in you right away, and I'm having to say goodbye to my wife, who at the time was just my girlfriend, and I'm like, she already knew. She knew that I already lost people. I'm like, well, I hope to see you in 6 months for R&R. I'll do
Yeah.
my best. Instead of the first time you go over, you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be nothing. We're gonna go over there and kick some ass. And
Uh-huh.
that's just not the case. Yeah, that second deployment, even the first, they were good fighters. It was just the IEDs weren't to that level yet. You go back for '06, '08, and they'd had years to work on their craft and foreign fighters and foreign influence coming in and training them and money. You saw it. They were taking out Abrams, Bradleys, Strikers. It was just
Yeah, because you think about Baqubah too, that was such an area that wasn't affected or there wasn't really a presence there. And if there was a coalition presence, they didn't get off the beaten path. So the enemy had years, like some of those deep buried IEDs or those coverts, whatever they were using, they
Mhm.
were stacking explosives in there for years.
Yep.
So, we went to a place where there was a Welsh enemy that had a lot of time to prepare.
Mhm.
And, I always go back to the story where I was talking to, when the strikers came to town for the whole, the surge. And I just remember telling them, like, hey, these things are ripping tanks in half. What do you think it's going to do to a striker?
Mhm.
And I just remember there was this one NCO who was like, "No, you guys just don't know what you're doing." And it's like, okay, but we had that similar confidence too. And as you were saying, the enemy was prepared. They had a lot of time.
They had time to dig in, and I don't remember the timeline for when we started getting beefed up because I'm at the beginning of that tour it was just us, and then it was just too
Yeah,
much area to cover, and maybe it was when they surged Baghdad, they surged Baqubah also because that's when 520th came in, 573rd came in with 82nd, but I remember I have a similar story to what you just said. We were on Warhorse one day, and I think I was up in one of the shower stalls or something shaving, and I remember all these new patches were around, and I remember just they were do something. You get sick of just
yeah,
patrolling and nothing happens. You get complacent, you get cocky, and that's just normal reaction, especially when you got a combat MOS and that's what you signed up to do. But I remember telling them, like, guys, you don't want to, you shouldn't want to be here. Because
yeah,
I wish they would tell us like, hey, 520's here and 82nd's here. You guys can go somewhere else where it's chill. Everyone would have been like, heck yeah, let's go get a little break and then come back and finish these people off.
yeah.
I'm never going to fault them for that. We were all there the same way. It's just we had just a few months of that just wear you down real quick.
Yeah, because when and I don't, I have the same issue sometimes with things being a little fuzzy, but, like you said, you started off coming as a late deployer. The HHCs already had some casualties, but
Mm-hmm.
then when you look across the entire battalion, and there's been casualties, KIA, WIA, and
Mhm.
what I like to try to re-emphasize to people is like a lot of our wounded in action weren't just wounded; they're like life-changing injuries.
Yeah.
These weren't just as a return to duties. This wasn't oh Tim can just walk it off and he'll be back. Life-changing injuries.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a huge difference.
Wasn't a, ricochet in the arm where you get some surgery and you're back in a couple weeks. Like, guys are going home and not coming back.
Yeah,
And they were fortunate enough to survive, but people were going home missing limbs and, plates in their heads, and their backs are wrecked for the rest of their lives.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, I still had all my friends that were in Crazy Horse because all those guys I deployed with the first time. So every time we would come to Warhorse to do our weekly maintenance, I would always run down and check in with those guys to see how they were doing. I knew
yeah,
guys that were in Delta's tank company too.
yeah.
So, I mean, that deployment was different because for our platoon, we got tasked out to a lot of people. Like, we spent some time attached
It
to
did.
Echo, the engineers. We spent a lot of time with Bone. Half our platoon got tasked out to 5/3, so we were doing stuff with the 82nd. So we got to know a lot of different people. So when your bubble grows like that, it's just every time you hear about an honor flight happening or another wounded, you're like, well, the chances are a lot higher that I know this person, as opposed to how it was my first tour where I knew my platoon, I knew my company, but it seemed like everybody was a lot more meshed and tangled, just the way that area was.
There was, and then I don't know if you were there for this part or if it was the first part, but at one point the scouts were landowners. They were out at that TV station or that
Hmm.
radio tower.
Yeah.
So the scouts were flexed and used in a lot of different ways than their traditional mission, and that's a whole nother thing. I mean, you went to that reclass. How much of that reclass school you went to actually was stuff you could use?
The only thing I didn't know that actually came in handy during that second deployment was the Mark 19, because that just wasn't a tanker weapon. A little bit of Bradley training, which, by the way, tanks, Abrams are a lot better than Bradleys. But I wasn't in a Bradley section. So, I mean, I can go out there and operate a gun, but, I mean, the reclass was call for fire and stuff like that. It's just, I guess traditional scout stuff that it just wasn't used in Iraq. But I was there for that time out it was the Dial Media Center.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
I loved it out there because it was just our own space. It was our platoon. We had a cook or two. We had our two medics. We had some commo guys, and then a few Iraqis lived there. But that place had such nice standoff from anything around it that our
Yeah.
security was never a concern because you can see for miles in every direction. It was just it was like a sense of peace being there because you knew no one was going to do anything to you.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they sent enough people at us, there's going to be some trouble. I mean, I love
It
it.
wasn't like living on Warhorse.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, it was relaxed. Luckily, we had our connections with the mortar platoon, who was the PSD. So we always had a heads up when someone was coming down. So if a sergeant major or Colonel Goins was coming or a brigade level or higher, we always had a heads up. So everyone was always shaved and, boots were bloused, and we were always in the right uniform, but we made sure we really were when we had visitors. So shout out to the mortar platoon for always looking out for us.
It's those connections, and yeah, those mortars, they were great for
Mm.
everybody.
Yeah.
All right, so you got there late, kind of bounced around, but what major operations or tell me about, some more about your experience. I mean, it doesn't have to be in a timeline, but, what are some big things that stick out to you about, AO Baqubah?
Well, I was expecting to show up and be a gunner for Sergeant Mullenberg. I was his tank gunner, but when I got there, I had my own crew waiting for me. I love that, being an E5 and a truck commander. I wasn't planning on it, but I was ready for it, and I had a great crew. My gun, I had a couple different drivers throughout the deployment, but Gromberg was my gunner the whole time, and he was excellent. Now we had a good time. The platoon breakdown was two wheeled sections and a Bradley section, so I spent most of that time in our Bravo section. So Sergeant Foster was the platoon sergeant. and then it was myself and Sergeant Mullenberg were the three crews. The time at the DMC was cool because we had our AO that we would go cover, so we would just run missions out of the DMC, go out, do our thing, come back. It was pretty chill there once we were back. We go to Warhorse once a week, I think it was, for vehicle maintenance. Go to Fob Gabe to pick up our log pack, pick up all the food. Luckily, we had connections there too, so every time we went to pick up, we would almost have unlimited access to Rip It and all that good stuff. So the Humvees are always, the coolers were always stocked. We were always out.
I was thinking that meme. Did Rip It know it was going to become the drinkable war?
I bet they didn't, but geez, that would have been good to get some stock in that back in like 2003, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And in Gabe, I think everybody had some type of connection at Fob Gabe because they were just giving out food. They were giving out the rippets. Like
mhm,
that was the place to go and get the good.
mhm,
Warhorse was not giving out anything too great, but Fob Gabe, they must have just loved giving out stuff because I remember going with the mortars
mhm.
and picking up stuff.
Yeah, they had a good chow hall too there, Gabe. They always had good food.
They
Um,
did. That was another one.
yeah. Now, like it seems like from like early on in deployment up until when we got attached to Bone, um, a lot of that's kind of blurry to me. I mean, I don't think nothing too significant happened. It was just normal
Yeah.
patrols as usual. The time we spent with Bravo really stuck with me just because the places that they were holding down, there was always something interesting going on there, whether it was in Barretts at the IP station or at Bone Disney
Oh, Disney.
at the school. I think that town was Tahrir, if I remember right. I could be wrong, but we would just go down there and we just kind of fell into their company like just another platoon. We would just do the rotations down there. We'd go down, relieve somebody, spend 5 to 7 days there, I think it was, and then the next platoon would come in and relieve us, and then we'd go back to. I think we were back at Warhorse just running patrols out of there. But yeah, I mean, I had a good time. I mean, we all had our good times.
Yeah. Make the best of the circumstances.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we ran a few patrols out of the IP station down there in Barretts. Every time there was some operations going on where the snipers would come out, we would go out with the snipers and be their security. So there was a few patrols we ran where we would, go on foot out of the IP station and hop some walls, take over a house for a couple of days, and just hang out with those guys. A couple of times we were getting. I mean, there was a lot of sniper fire in Barretts, so
Yeah.
I know Bravo lost some guys down there, so that was always, it was always fun when you had to take the trash out and throw it to the burn pit. There was a little gap you had to run through because you never knew who was looking at you from down the road. So even just filling up the generator there. I mean, I remember I filled up the generator one day with fuel, and 20 minutes later, a mortar hit that thing dead on.
Wow.
So yeah, got lucky that day, but yeah, it was always
Yeah,
always interesting.
the Barrett's IP station, that was always kind of just a little point of friction, but there was always some contact there. Yeah, it's the first time I've heard about this. Running to the burn pit was, running because you had that alley and the snipers.
Yeah, there was
That's great info.
There were some tall buildings in Barretts. I think they were north of us, so they had a good line of sight into the compound at certain areas. So yeah, we would mad dash with the trash bags, drop them in the burn pit, catch your breath, and then run back. Did that a few times. Guys down there were having the burn, the porta john buckets of fun. Talk keep it
And
peep.
then, like you said, just filling up the generator. I mean, you literally fill it up. 20 minutes later, it takes a direct hit from a mortar.
Yeah, yeah. You never know. I mean, if it's your time, it's your time. I guess that just wasn't my time. Yeah, I was always getting pop shots at us down there, and that was just a rough town. And then the whole Palm Grove south of there, and the whole town was just, it was kind of the situation the whole area was in. Like, no one really went out and patrolled that area before we got there. So you just didn't go on those roads. You didn't go south of the IP station because you were just asking to get blown up. Like, you knew it was going to happen. So why do it? Just, it was kind of like, let them have that area. We'll have ours. There's no reason to do anything stupid and just go down there just to check it out. You know it's down there. They're waiting.
Yeah. Yes. You're not taking two Humvees and going south.
Yeah, you're not even taking two Bradleys and going south because the stuff was big enough to take them out.
Yeah. So what was the mentality? I mean, you were saying how you went through these rotations, so you knew, okay, this week we're rotating to the Brits IP station. What was the mentality?
You knew it was going to be a week full of guard. We had our perimeter guards. We had OP1, which was a 2-story house that we took over and made into an OP. I guess we were never concerned about direct attack there, but there were some cold nights there. I mean, there was a little side room there at OP1. We had one of them old school Army heaters. I don't really remember too much about them, but I remember we used to shut the doors and kind of hotbox that room. Who knows what we were breathing in, but we were staying warm. Yeah, you went down there. You knew you're gonna rough it for a week or two, however long it was. There was no showers on down there. Just brush your teeth every day, every few days. Run your head under the water buffalo and the old Axe body spray and baby wipe trick. Everybody stayed somewhat fresh, but yeah, I mean, and then we had it better, a lot better compared to our Bradley guys. Those guys are going to be in the Bradley for a week straight. Because
Okay.
those guys were out on the roads, out on the perimeter. They were just rotating guys on the gun, rotating guard, just kind of keeping an eye on our perimeter. Those guys were living out that thing for days at a time. At least I got a cot to sleep on at night.
Yeah, so austere environment, and then you got contact. I mean, there's always some sort of, I mean, just doing the daily chores,
Mhm.
taking out the trash, filling up the generator, whereas,
Mhm.
life or death almost.
Yeah, and they would always, you know how it is. You're always getting watched. So whenever time someone was swapping out another platoon, and that's when they would like to throw some mortars in there. They would attack guys on the way in and out of Barretts. But whenever the inbound platoon was coming in and there wasn't enough room to park all the vehicles, so somewhere outside, ours were still inside. You're trying to just free up spots so they can fit at the same time of making sure you got all your equipment, everything you need. So that was just a vulnerable time for them to get on us, and they knew it. They watched us long enough. They saw the patterns. So that was probably the worst part of the whole thing about Barretts was, when you're getting there and when you're leaving. It's like you knew something was going to happen. So,
So you guys are doing steady state operations out of Barretts, and then battalion throws even more towards that area. One of those things was the scouts had to go clear some palm groves.
yeah, I heard about that a mission. They wanted us to go out on an SKT, small kill team, 5 of us, into the palm groves. And the objective was to see where they were using the river to cross to move weapons in and out of Barretts. Since we pretty much had north of Barretts covered, and then east of Barretts was where the Dial Media Center was. So we were there, and I think after us, I think 20th was there, or maybe 6-9 Cav was there. So the town was surrounded except to the south, because north of that was, I think it was Tahrir, wherever the government center was, there was a presence there too. So the point of that patrol was just to see what we can find, go out there and actually do some scout stuff. Go do some recon, see if we can find boats or low river crossings or ropes or anything where they were using. So we got tasked with that. It was Captain Miller leading that patrol with me and Demuth. We were the 2E5s, and then brought Gromberg and Rogers, our 2E4s. So me and Demuth got together before that patrol, and we kind of game planned on anything additional we might need that we might usually not think of to bring for a patrol. We each had our backpacks, so we had extra smokes, we had flares. We even remembered to bring a VS-17 panel, a couple bottles of water per person, extra frags. Me and him, we each had 203s on our rifles. Aside from what we each carried on our vest, I don't know what he carried, but I think I kept 3 or 4, ready to get on my vest. I think I probably brought an extra 15 or 20 in my bag, just given that it was Barretts, and you never know. So I know we went out under the cover of darkness. We had to leave the IP station and cross kind of a little like an open field. We did have a Bradley sitting there that was always facing south, covering us. So we just cut across this field, went into the groves, and then got to do some cool scout stuff for a while. Sneaking around, like old school, using hand and arm signals and keeping the noise down. And then we were out there for a while. I remember the sun started coming up, and it was a humid morning. It had been raining for a couple days, and we didn't really find anything that we were set out to find. We kind of skirted the river as best we could with the terrain. We cut back into the grove a little bit and get a better path to the river if the terrain got too steep or something, but we didn't see anything where they were crossing the river. So we figured we would just, hang out there for a couple more hours and poke our heads around, see what we can see. And so we're just continuing to move, and there's just a bunch of spider trails in that palm grove. It's just dirt trails, just cutting to the paths. Everything was wet, slick, muddy. So I was I'm walking, and I come up to a fence in the middle of this palm grove. It was just barbed wire, strands of barbed wire with a bunch of vegetation shoved in it. So I thought that was kind of odd. I'm like, well, what's this doing out here? And something's getting hidden in here. Whether it's just a couple little huts in the middle of the pine grove or what. So I let Captain Miller know that. We're checking it out, and we found a breaching point. So we breached. And then it seemed like the trails just opened up more. It seemed a lot more organized. Like, instead of just random trails out in the woods, this was looked like it'd been used a lot, some of these trails. Yeah, I remember walking and I came up to like a four-way intersection on this path, and took a knee and popped my head out, didn't see anything, and then I get to go ahead and move across. And as soon as I stood up and stepped out, I looked to my left, and there's a guy looking right at me on a bicycle. He had just turned a corner and he saw me crossing. So give him the old hey, and play it off. That guy turned around so fast and just took off. I turn around and I'm like, hey, this guy is very spooked. I got a bad feeling. What do you want to do? And I get told, keep moving forward. Just if you see anybody else, just wait.
Okay, so potentially compromised, but you got told just wave.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going. Just wave at them. Smile. So we're creeping along, and then see a little mud hut. I see a older woman pop out. She sees me. We make eye contact. She turns around, right back in. I'm like, all right. Usually the old people aren't like that. Usually they'll stare you down or wave or something.
So now you're up. You got number two.
Compromise. Compromise twice.
The spidey senses are starting to tingle.
Yeah, it's like, all right, you knew something was about to happen. Especially it's Barretts. You don't underestimate Barretts. Everyone knows about Barretts. So we continue on. I'm still on point, and then all of a sudden we get engaged from behind. So we're walking south away from the IP station. We get engaged from the north. I turn around. Everybody's running at me, my whole team, because we were just on a wide open path. So I turn around, we start running south. We find a little offshoot trail. Everybody gets behind that. There's no cover, but we're concealed a little bit. So I do remember this Demuth was the last one. And as he was turning the corner, he fell. He slipped. And I thought he got hit. So I'm like getting ready to run out there and grab him and drag him. No, he just fell. It was slick. It's also Demuth. If you know Demuth, it's just what he is. It's what he does.
Oh, yeah, it's Demuth.
We love that guy. So we get some concealment. We start engaging back. And you can't really see anything. You can just hear where they're shooting from. So everybody's shooting rifles. I start shooting 203s. Demuth starts shooting his trees. I run out of what's on my vest. He runs out. I drop my bag. I'm pretty sure he had a bunch extra on him. So we were cross-loading each other enough. We shot a lot of 203s. All of a sudden, all the fire from the north stops. It just goes silent. So everybody's reloading. We're like, what's going on? To our left, which was west, towards the river, different group of people started shooting at us. And you can tell that they were a lot closer than the initial engagement. So we essentially walked into an L-shaped ambush. So they were north of us, they were west of us, they're coming like this on us. The whole time we have no comms. We weren't able to get a hold of anybody at the IP station to let them know that was us, that they were probably hearing all the gunfire. So I remember Gromberg had the radio with the long whip antenna, but that thing was, pretty collapsed. So I take a break from firing back to start putting the whip antenna together on his back while he's shooting. And it got to the point where I couldn't reach anymore while I'm on a knee. So, I would stand up, pop one section in, get back down on a knee. So I did that until we got that thing fully extended. And I don't remember if it was there. I think we did get comms there. I think a Miller was able to get a hold of someone and let them know that, hey, we're in contact. We're cut off and we got to push south.
So now you're going further away from the IP station.
Yeah, they were pushed. It was a well-designed ambush. I mean, they probably, once we got compromised, they massed their forces. They probably watched us move to wherever they wanted us to move, and then they got the green light to engage us. And I remember we decided to break contact. We had our backs up against barbed wire fencing, and it was probably chest height. So that was our only option, was to scale this. So everyone just starts hopping over this barbed wire. I remember I had so much adrenaline that I was the last one to go, and I threw my bag over, and I just went for it. I just launched myself. Man, I almost landed a front flip. I landed on my ass. I almost did it. But
that's pretty close.
I was pretty impressed because I'm not a small, agile guy. Even back then, I was always like a 200-pound guy. So yeah, we got across there, and we started moving as quickly as we could south. And the terrain was pretty shitty. It was probably 10, 15 minutes of back and forth fighting before we broke contact. I think the 203s really slowed them down because I was having Demuth shoot high and I was shooting low. So he was lobbing them at him, And as soon as I would hear his impact, I would stand up and damn near shoot one straight at him. So we were
Yeah.
just boom, 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 boom. I mean, they were less than 100 yards from us, so probably not too much further than those rounds needed to actually arm. I don't remember how far they had to go, but I think that just kind of shocked and awed them. They weren't expecting grenades to get shot at them, so I think that's what kind of gave us a chance to get out of there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we break out of there and we're going south, and we get sporadic comms just because of the canopy and the palm groves was thick. But they were able to divert one of the drones down and get eyes on us. And it's a good thing we had that VS-17 panel because I pulled that thing out of my ankle pocket, the one you keep your cigarettes in, and we were flagging that thing up at every clearing, and that drone was able to get eyes on us. So then he was kind of plotting us our grids while we went along. So we were all turned around at this point. We didn't really know exactly where the hell we were in the IP in the Palm Grove in relation to the police station. So as we're moving, we're being quiet. They're trying to recon by fire us. They're still shooting at us. They don't know where we're at. They were hoping we would shoot back so they could find us. No one, I don't think anybody fired another round that day. We just kept it quiet. So while we're trying to find the river, if we can find the river, we can figure out where we're at. And then we hear a dirt bike coming from the direction we just come from. So everyone gets a little bit of cover, and everyone's ready to rock. And these two guys turn the corner on a dirt bike, unarmed, saw us. Got so spooked, they dropped that dirt bike. We gripped them up. We snatched those guys up real quick. It was obvious what they were doing. They were scouting for us, but they were slick and they were unarmed, and they knew our ROE. Things would have probably been different if we had different people out there with us, but we stuck with the ROE, and we zip cuffed these guys, and we used to carry those little things in our pocket that had like some Arabic words in them. You remember what I'm talking about? And we're able to.
Your little basic kind of stop in,
Right. Had like the customs and cultures of the Arabic people, and don't wave with your left hand, how to say hello. River luckily was in there. So we were able to say river, and we made them lead us to the river. So we
Okay.
get to the river, and it was like a big sea. The river was the IP stations up here, and the river kind of there's a big sea around. We were down
Mhm.
here. So we were a few kilometers from where we started. So our plan was just to skirt that river, and luckily there was a slope up into the grove. So if we stay as close to that water as possible, we should be able to keep our heads down and not be seen. I really wanted to take care of those two guys that we detained. One of the ideas was just tie them up to a tree. One was just let them go. There were some other ideas thrown around between a few of us. We just let them go.
Okay.
By then, we had comms. Air weapons team showed up on station, so there was one or two Apaches.
You're
They bumped.
you're feeling a little more confident. You had a drone overhead. You had AWTs.
Yeah, I think the drone was one of them Ravens. I don't even think it was an armed drone. I think it was just like an ISR drone.
Yeah.
But we did have the Apaches showed up, and then QRF showed up on the other side of the river in tanks. So
Okay.
we got comms with the IP station, and I think we had a couple options. The options we were given were find an area big enough to land a Black Hawk in. All right. Option two was swim the river, swim across the river to where the tanks were. There was another option about, I think Bravo had a platoon show up to the IP station. Those guys were just going to ground assault into the Palm Grove. And there was another option of, I want to say, I could be wrong, I think it was one of the, whatever SF group was in our AO. They were going to come down the river on boats and get us. So we had four extraction options. Swim in the river, you remember how that water was over there.
Oh yeah.
So I probably would have died off 15 years ago with an infection, so I'm glad we didn't do that. That would have been tricky, though. We probably would have had to drop gear and,
It had a little current too, so yeah, that wasn't the easiest task.
no, we would have definitely had to drop our vests, bags. Probably would have just went with rifles, and what's the point of a helmet at that point? You might as well ditch that too. But luckily, someone manning that drone, or I don't know if it was the drone or someone in one of them Apaches, they sent down a grid to us. They said, you guys get to this grid, we can land a Black Hawk there. So we
Okay.
skirted the river, and got to that grid. They told us to hang tight. It'd be 20, 25 minutes for a Black Hawk because it was coming up from Baghdad. So we just kind of laid on the slope with our
Mhm.
backs to the river, tanks behind us, Apaches above us. I mean, how much more safe can you get at that point? So yeah, Black Hawk came. We threw a couple smokes out. They dropped. I remember this vividly. I remember their door gunner was hanging out, looking right at us. Just come on, come on. So we ran on there. I was the last one on the Black Hawk. Man, no one had a chance to even buckle in. As soon as I got my second foot in there, we were just straight up got buckled in. And I remember thinking like, man, I hope they don't drop us back at the IP station because I'm supposed to have guard in the next few hours. They started heading back to a Warhorse, and I remember on that Black Hawk, I was sitting next to Demuth, and I pull a cigarette out and I hand him one. I remember the door gunner looked at us like he was about to tell us you can't smoke on here, and then he just went back to scanning. So smoking a couple good cigarettes on the way back to Warhorse, and then yeah, we got back, and First Sergeant Colella met us up there with a Humvee, and as soon as we got off, that Black Hawk was gone, which is a shame because I know he wanted to thank them. I've tried to find these guys over the years to find out who they were, just because I don't know what unit they were with or where they came from, but they saved our ass that day.
Yeah. Well, hopefully through this project that, I know we've had a couple leads and a couple people talk about it,
Mhm.
but hopefully we can make that connection, get people synced up and try to bring this, some full circle of the story and get that crew linked up with you guys. And, that'd be great at the reunion if, by chance everybody's there.
Yeah, yeah. I remember they had the Keystone patch. So I'm
Okay.
a Pennsylvania native, so that could have been Pennsylvania Guard, or I don't know if other Guard units use that same thing, but I do remember that.
Hey, maybe we'll make a little clip of this and put it out there. But aviators in Baqubah of 608, or you flew up from Baghdad and picked up some guys out of the palm groves with the Keystone patch.
Yeah,
Give us a call,
and I got
send us an email. We're trying to connect some people.
I ended up getting an award for that day, but I can tell you right now, it was March 3rd, 2007. So if you were a Blackhawk crew that picked up a bunch of exhausted guys from a palm grove on that day, we owe you some beer.
Hey, I like it. That's a great plug. Maybe we'll try to put the website on there or the Facebook, and hopefully we can make this connection happen.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, we always wanted to find out who those guys were, but you know how it is. You know how many different units are over there.
Oh yeah.
But back at Warhorse, I remember we did some debriefing. I don't remember who it was with. I remember someone asked if we were out looking for the potential possible Al Qaeda training camp. That was news to me that was even a possibility. So I think we had found it. Maybe we just got there too early. A lot of them were still asleep, so they didn't get all the troops rallied in time. Maybe we got in and got out before they were uh, awake. Something I always remember about that day, though, it was after the fact. We got a ride back to the pad where all the chews were, and a bunch of the headquarters guys were having a cookout. And, they had a big grill, and there was probably burgers and chicken and all this stuff. Probably one of them Fob Gabe hookups. They got all this food. But
Those mortars bringing stuff back from Gabe.
yeah, but I just remember I remember sitting there with Demuth, and we were just this was a long day. Like we went out. It was still dark out when we started this day, and by now it was between lunch and dinner, and we had kind of hustled around for many kilometers at this point, and just to come back and see these guys like it's like a Saturday afternoon, drink some beer, watching football, have a cookout, like, hey guys, want anything? And there we are, just going through that. I remember I turned him down. I said, no, I'm gonna go to the chow hall and give me a sandwich and come take a shower. And I don't know. It's one of those differences, I guess, between the guys that went out all the time and the guys that didn't. And no fault to anybody who didn't. No fault to anybody who's you need everybody. But it was just I remember that stood out. It's like, man, I just went through hell and we're back here having a cookout. I'm like, man, maybe I picked the wrong job.
Yeah, and that also kind of just highlights the place we were at and
Hmm.
the just overall, when you get into steady state operations,
Yeah.
you run into that kind of stuff where you have those that are out there, sucking it up and
Hmm.
living in austere environments like the IP station.
Hmm.
And then you have, the people that are on Fob Warhorse who've never left Fob Warhorse, and that's their.
And it shows too, like even the difference in our days. Like when we were at the media center, I mean, some days we had nothing to do. I mean, sometimes we'd have days with no patrols planned, and we're gonna have a cookout too. We're gonna hang out, and have a good time. It's like you never knew what the next day was gonna be. You can have a nice, relaxing day, drinking some near beer, or if you knew someone that was able to smuggle you something, you had that. And the next day you might out getting blown up. It was just
almost like that's the bumper sticker for Iraq. I mean, like you just said, you could be the one barbecuing or you could be the one getting blown up. It just the day of the week it was.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of guys nowadays probably have a lot of PTSD issues, is because, one day you're going through hell, then you can go through days of nothing, but you have to be ready to turn that back on. It's like, I think that's why a lot of guys have all these problems later in life with being on edge, is because you can go from a cookout to hell and like that. And I had a doctor tell me years ago, it was probably the best thing, it was ever way to explain this to me, is say, your body's nervous system is like a rubber band. You go deploy somewhere and you stretch that rubber band out for a year. It's never going to go back to that original shape. It's always going to be a little bit stretched out, a little bit worn in. That just always stuck with me. So if I ever have to explain, a lot of people ask, like, well, do you have PTSD? How do you deal with it? And, there's a million different types of PTSD, but that's just always been that stuck with me as a good way to explain it to someone who doesn't know.
Yeah, I, that's a great way. I mean, uh, so you're back, Palm Groves. It's March. We got quite a few more months before we redeploy. Was there anything that really stuck out with you from the rest of your time?
Not really that stands out. I mean, we still used to go back into our rotations at the IP stations.
Yeah.
Every now and then, I may have known someone. Might have been me, might not, but someone would go outside and just throw a 203 down in that general direction, just because we knew what was out there.
Yeah.
Just to, get a test fire.
Yeah.
I know a few weeks, maybe a couple months after that incident, someone sent a whole squadron into that palm grove to clear it out. It might have been five.
Oh yeah, there were some big clearing operations after that. I mean, if you remember, FSO got a B1 approved, and they were dropping bombs into the river because they were trying to blow up all those little bridging sites and the rat lines,
Yeah.
that ran across the river. So yeah, there was quite a few operations where that area got cleared.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody have ended up, like, I don't know the story of the American people that went in there. I don't know if they took casualties. I don't know if there were injuries. Like, I just never got the brief on that. I mean, hopefully everyone was okay. Just to think that a unit that size went in there after us, we were out there with five guys, and not one of us got a scratch on our bodies, which was, it's just still mind blowing to this day. No one twisted an ankle. No one got a scrape on the face from a tree branch that we were running past. Like, to my knowledge, like, I came out of there like fully intact. Like, everything was like how? Because they were so close to us. Like, how didn't they accidentally hit one of us? If one of us got hit, then what? Then you got someone. How are you going to carry someone out of that? Especially when you're in the middle of an ambush.
Yeah.
It could have been very bad. And
Yeah, that could have been a really bad day.
and then, the people that were out there, there's five solid bodies out there.
But yeah, I mean, you got yourself, DeMuth. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys were not little
No,
guys.
Rogers, Romberg,
Rogers, yeah.
and then Miller. Miller was a stout country fed boy. So I mean, we were all over 200. So if anybody would have got anything happen, broken ankle, something, it would have just thrown such a wrench in getting out of there. I don't know. Someone was looking out for us that day.
Definitely. I mean, that's why we're here telling this story right now and not, having a different conversation.
Right. Yeah.
But hopefully, I mean, through the work that we're doing with the Debrief project, maybe that's another answer we'll get. We're asking about aviators. Maybe we'll find people that were on that follow up mission that cleared those palm groves, and maybe we'll get some closure there.
Yeah, I would love to hear what they have to say about what they encountered out there and what exactly was found, because I mean, we didn't see a thing. We were engaging gunfire is what we were doing. It's just it still interests me to, like, I just really want to know what was actually out there, and how much resistance they encountered, and what they found once it was clear. Like, was there a bunch of intel, munitions? Like, what was there? Because we went there and stirred the hornet's nest up, and they went there and finished it off. We tagged them in. They took care of business for us.
So after Iraq, what would you say how AO Baqubah has affected your life?
Well, after that deployment, I ended up PCSing up to Knox for a few years to be an instructor. And
Okay.
the first 6 months was great because there was five guys from Baqubah that were with me, and we were all in the same platoon. So that was so fun. just dealing with privates, the whole training thing and hanging out with those guys. And then everybody started PCSing again and getting moved around. And it just, I just didn't want to stay in anymore. The Army it seemed like it was going in a direction that I didn't want to be a part of anymore, with just the way they wanted drills and us normal cadre to talk to privates. And I just decided to get out from there. And as bad as Baqubah was, I was there with the best people. So it would never be that level again for me. I just knew it, especially after what we went through and losing all those people. If I would have stayed in, I would have retired a few years ago, but who knows what would have happened. I wanted to get out. I wanted to have kids. I didn't want to have kids while I was in and have to deploy. I saw that happen too much to other people. Didn't want to do that. So got out, became a family man, and still keep in touch with everybody and just living the life now, working, taking care of the kids, just the best we can all hope for.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you're doing that. I mean, so you achieve what you wanted to by getting out. And yes, I mean, you keeping up over the years and, you've talked to other people who stayed in and, the military's always changing, just like everything else. I mean, you saw that it wasn't going in the direction you wanted to be a part of and you wanted to have a family. So, but yeah, so as we kind of wrap things up, any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to kind of share, get off your chest about AO Bakuba?
Ao Baqubah. So there's some real good times there and some real bad times there, and I feel like that had a lot of influence on who I am today and how I conduct myself and just the bigger picture you always get. It experience like that will teach you not to stress the little things because they can always be worse, and you think back on some of those times and they were very real. And the big thing that helps me and helps everybody is you got to stay in contact with everybody. We have a great group of friends a lot of us are local in Texas. And my buddy Pap, he's the glue. He makes it a point to keep everyone talking and planning reunions. And it's just so good for everybody. And, Memorial Day this year, we're going up to Oklahoma for a big reunion. It's the first one I'm going to. They've been doing it for a few years. They pick different places every year. They started a nonprofit fundraising, bringing the kids, the wife up. My kids are going to get to meet a lot of my old Army friends for the first time. And just that's my recommendation to anybody, especially if you're having trouble after you get out of the military, because it's tough, especially them first few years. And you go through some dark times and you might feel like, there's nothing else for me here. And you got each other. Everybody that you were there with has got your backs. Make it a point to talk to the guys regular, check in on them, shoot them a text, make fun of them, just like you would if you were still with them. Because when we all get together, it's like 20 years ago. It's like we're all in our 40s now, but we all still got the maturity of an 18-year-old when we get together, and it's just good for the soul. It keeps everyone in line, and everyone's accounted for each other, and it's good. So that's my advice for anybody.
Yeah, that is a great advice. I will say, as a person who's been to your house and
Hmm.
also, keeps in touch with the infamous or the famous Pap. Yeah, I mean, it's making that effort,
Hmm.
the effort of keeping in touch, the effort of, hey, let's all get together. And I definitely look forward to, sometime this summer, getting together with everybody. We got to beat the heat if we're going to go shooting here in Texas.
Yeah,
But yeah, that is a key. Is just keeping in touch.
yeah, we'll get another range day planned. We'll get out there early in the morning when it opens, and then we'll go get some barbecue or some tacos for lunch.
Yeah, and then we definitely gotta talk to everybody about this whole group because it'd be great if we could get all five of you guys. I don't know if anyone keeps in touch with Captain Miller, but if we get as many together as possible, that'd be great to share, in depth about the Pongros.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's someone that keeps in touch with Captain Miller. I haven't. I haven't heard since we got back. I haven't heard from him. But if someone does and can get a hold of him to get the officer point of view, which I don't think any of us that have, the four of us that I was talking about earlier, Demuth, Kronberg, Rogers, like we still talk regularly and hang out regularly. So our stories are all hashed out. There's a lot I forget that someone else doesn't forget. But I haven't had the chance to hear from Miller's point of view, like what planning went into that mission, like who sent that tasking down to him, and what were his final thoughts on all of it. So yeah, that would be good. But yeah, I would love to do a group sit down with those guys because everything I just talked about, there's probably so much I missed that I forgot, and we can all fill in those gaps together.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get on the calendar. We'll make sure to find a place that works best for everybody, but it'd be great. It'd be good. I think it'd be great for everybody. The last question I have for you, Zim, So, what's your thoughts on this whole doing it online? Did you find this to be useful, helpful?
Yeah, I think it was great. Like you mentioned earlier, offline, you guys are looking to engage more and more and more people. You got to find another way than in person because it's just not, fiscally possible, and everyone's so spread out. So these online things are great. You guys edit them how you want, but it's just a great way just to get in touch with the masses. Who knows where some of these guys live now? Everyone scatters, you know that.
Mhm.
Everybody's got access to the internet, and to get everybody's story and get a good picture painted of what Baqubah was like for everybody, not just these set of guys or what the grunts went through, or to get everybody's perspective because everyone has their own story to tell, and that'll paint the whole picture. And an outsider can finally like look at all that and read through everything and truly understand what a deployment is like. Because all you see on TV and the movies is the action, and you don't see the downtime and those rough phone calls with home and being bored and doing. I'm sure people had to do layouts all the time. We all hate layouts, but I don't really have to do that on deployment. But I'm sure a lot of people did, and that shit sucks. So
Oh, yeah.
getting your ass chewed because you got your top off. Well, it's 110 degrees. I don't care. Put your top back on. There's different levels of stress, and everybody's got their own story of.
The infamous Fob Warhorse defect Nazi who, oh, you're dirty, you can't come in, or oh, your boots aren't bloused, or whatever, where's your weapon, or
They
whatever.
tried to get us one night
It,
after we were trying to go to midnight chow after we just got back from like 8 hours of sitting out on the route doing a OP. And I'm like, you are not. There's no way anyone's gonna listen to you right now about we can't come into the chow hall. Like, come on. Midnight chow was the best. It was always breakfast and then like fried foods.
yeah,
So you go to get an omelet and some mozzarella sticks and be happy.
yeah, I mean, but like we were talking about, this, the different experiences of Iraq. I mean,
Right. That Chow Nazi was probably getting his ass chewed from someone above him to be like that. So while we all hate
yep,
the guy who was at the clearing barrels giving us shit for being dirty, that dude was probably getting wrecked for not enforcing it. So,
yep.
and back, now that I'm much older, maybe a little wiser, what they say about hindsight is maybe that guy wasn't such an asshole. Maybe he was just, he was getting his ass chewed. So,
He was just another guy doing a
but
job.
we all hate the defect Nazi. I
Yeah,
respect what he was doing. I get it.
yep, we've all been there. So, but yeah, well, I really appreciate you being the first. Like I said, work out some of these technology parts of it, and no, just again, just trying to get this ball rolling. And I think this was a great little test run, and
Mhm.
I'm glad we got to talk about a bunch of stuff. And like I said, I really do look forward to getting together with everybody. But yeah, this was great. So I really appreciate it, Zim.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anything you ever need, I'm always there to answer questions. And thanks to you for helping out First Sergeant Colella with this. Bobby is everyone. I still don't like calling him Bobby. I'm still gonna call him First Sergeant because he still scares me. But what he did with that book and then the Debrief project, we're all so thankful and appreciative of what he does. So now that you're on board helping him, it's just a great thing, and we're very happy to be a part of it and thankful that you guys are doing this. 'Cause it's taking up your time too. You got two little babies at home, and here you are talking to me on a Saturday. So I appreciate it, Mike.